Hello and welcome everyone to our next episode of Help and Trade podcast, where we give space to entrepreneurs and their startups. My today's guest is Mathias. Mathias is a CEO and founder of MOMM Diagnostics. And I'm really excited to have Mathias here because for his young age, he's really accomplished. His CV is full of remarkable things and studies and researches. And I'm giving this space to Mathias now to introduce himself. Mathias, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for the introduction. I'm Mathas Wipf, CEO and co-founder of MOMM Diagnostics, an early stage startup in Basel focusing on the health of pregnant women.
Sounds great. Let's first get to your studies, because that's something that is still mesmerizing me. How much of research did you actually do before you became an entrepreneur? Can you mention some of those which you did before?
Sure, yes. I started with studies here in Basel. I studied nanoscience, so it's a curriculum mixed of biology, physics and chemistry. Then I went on and did a PhD in physics, also here in Basel, which was already quite applied on the research side. So I was working with electrical biosensors. The topic was silicon nanowires for biosensing. And there I found it very fascinating to sort of bridge the gap from fundamental research to try to do something applied, which then brought me to Yale University, where I did a postdoc fellowship working at the Electrical Engineering Institute. And we sort of developed a novel readout technology for biochemical assays. There I really learned about the biochemistry of these things and how it works, and how to combine new technologies with a background in physics and electrical engineering with today's state-of-the-art biochemistry. Following my postdoc fellowship, I went to join a startup, Avails Medical, in Silicon Valley, California, which was really fascinating. So I knew the guy who founded the startup, Oren. I joined there as a development engineer, and the product they're developing is an antibiotic resistance test, a fast test that would allow the doctors to identify what kind of infection you have and then give you the best option for treatment. So what drugs to use, so not to abuse antibiotics. This test is based on technology that has great potential for other applications as well. And so that also was the initiation of the idea to come up with a test for preeclampsia, which is the basis for MOMM Diagnostics now.
What brought you back from California, from Silicon Valley to Basel? I mean, you were already in the Silicon Valley. Now you moved back to Basel. It's not a downgrade for me. For me, it's a great achievement to be in Basel. Yet, I can imagine that moving from Silicon Valley to Basel for you, it also had to have another reason, I suppose.
Yeah, there were several reasons. So on the one hand, there were personal reasons, for family reasons. And on the other hand, we established this research collaboration with EMPA, the Swiss Federal Research Institute for Material Sciences. That was very fruitful. So I would move back and forth between California and Switzerland to sort of establish this collaboration. We achieved great results, which were then the basis also for starting MOMM Diagnostics. So I would say the underlying idea or the spark to work on preeclampsia came from Avails Medical, so the Silicon Valley company, and then the fundamentals on the technology or research side came during my work at EMPA, so the Research Institute at Dübendorf in Zurich.
So now on the timescale, you're back in Basel and you're trying to establish a company in order to diagnose preeclampsia. Is that right?
Exactly. So let me maybe first talk a little bit about preeclampsia. It's not a very known pregnancy condition. It's a condition that only affects pregnant women, as it is now understood that it's linked to an abnormal development of the placenta. And so that can cause severe problems for the mother and therefore also for the unborn baby. So it's a progressive condition that can get worse and worse over the course of pregnancy, as this misdevelopment of placental arteries, they cause some further damages in organs of the pregnant women. The only cure for now is termination of the pregnancy. So if that has to be very early, it's basically an abortion, or if it's later, you have to induce labor early, which could have follow-up or devastating effects for the babies due to premature birth. So the idea is to identify preeclampsia as early as possible, so measures can be taken to suppress the onset of preeclampsia until the delivery is safe for the baby. Doctors still rely on very old-fashioned methods, so it's basically a raise in blood pressure and an excess of protein in the urine. And these are very unspecific signs and symptoms because pregnant women often have high blood pressure. So it could be linked to other indications as well. To specifically diagnose preeclampsia has not been easy until recently, where two very prominent biomarkers have been identified. So biomarkers are proteins or hormones in your blood or urine that indicate a certain disease or a certain state of health. And two biomarkers that are linked to preeclampsia have been identified. And now, just this year, a blood test is being reimbursed by insurance companies to test for preeclampsia. However, these tests, they rely on centralized labs. So you have to go to a doctor, take a blood sample, they have to ship it to a centralized lab, and you probably get your result a couple of days later. Until then, your condition or a pregnant woman's condition might change drastically. Often doctors would send pregnant women with suspected of preeclampsia to the hospitals right away. There, a lot of rigorous testing goes on, so also the healthcare costs increase rapidly, and the pregnant women obviously get nervous, and so it's not a nice thing to experience during your pregnancy. Our idea is to develop a rapid test that can be performed at the doctor's office. So during prenatal visit, when you do a lot of tests anyway, so it's an additional test that can give clear results whether you're at risk of developing a preeclampsia or not. So the doctors have immediate results and can give you the best medical treatment possible. This is our angle. So we are developing a technology that allows the detection of these preeclampsia biomarkers at the point of care in a rapid test format, meaning you have the results immediately during the doctor's visit. So there's no need for complicated lab routines, or you have to, come again to see your doctor a couple of days later, which can be a burden for a lot of pregnant women.
How would the test look like at the end of the day? Would it be a little blood sample? Would it be something that you have to take, certain liquids from the body, something like that?
Exactly. So it's going to be a drop of blood. So we just need a couple of microliter as sample volume. That then is loaded onto a cartridge, and within a couple of minutes, the doctor will have the results on screen.
Sounds very convenient. Is there any other sort of treatment which would be possible just because of fast assumption that it is preeclampsia or actually diagnosis?
Well, doctors have a couple of limited tools, I would say. So one is a low dose of aspirin that has, so clinical studies have shown that this can suppress the onset of preeclampsia, and so sort of delay the onset of preeclampsia and therefore delay inducing of the labor until it's safe for the baby. Or in more acute cases, it's the injection of magnesium sulfate, which helps to prevent seizures, which is then called eclampsia. If the condition is getting worse for the women, this is like a last resort they can do to prevent these seizures. The only cure is really the termination of the pregnancy, which today it's safe after 30 weeks of pregnancy. However, for the sake of the baby, it's best to have as natural course of pregnancy as possible.
And I think also a lot of women will actually welcome this message that natural way of giving birth is the way to go forward. And thanks also to your test, straightforward from the very beginning, what is the condition and what you need to be treated on. But there's also no doubt in that. The test that you're researching on, what is the success rate for the test?
Well, I have not performed any clinical studies yet in terms of test sensitivity. However, the clinical results given by these biomarkers, the test sensitivity based on the two preeclampsia biomarkers is very high, and also the negative predictive value, which tells you if it's not a preeclampsia, is extremely high. It's close to 99%, which helps a lot of women for ease of mind and a lot of doctors so they don't have to send their patients to the hospital.
I suppose insurances will also welcome this.
Exactly. So there are studies that preeclampsia causes 1/3 of the obstetric costs in the US, so which is more than $2 billion every year. So it's quite substantial. And I haven't mentioned it yet. So preeclampsia is maybe not that known, or the term preeclampsia is not that known. However, it affects a lot of women. In Switzerland, 2% of the pregnant women are diagnosed with preeclampsia, and about 8% in general are suspected to have preeclampsia, just based on elevated blood pressure and an excess of protein in the urine. The incidence rate is quite high.
So how far are you from having the final product developed, the test itself?
So we're still in the technology development. On the one hand, preeclampsia biomarkers are challenging, but that's also what makes it interesting for our technology. So our technology really focuses on quantification of low abundant proteins in body fluids, which is more challenging to do because we're targeting proteins that occur at very low concentrations. So we're talking about picograms per milliliter. So it's basically you're in the order of 1 grain of salt in an Olympic swimming pool that you have to detect. And this from a single drop of blood. If you scale it down, it's quite a low concentration. That makes it challenging for point-of-care applications, so for rapid testing. Technologies have evolved for centralized labs, so it's not a problem to test them there. But in a rapid test format where you need the results in minutes, it's really very challenging. And that's where our technology comes in. However, to do so, we still have to test the reliability of our technology. There will be clinical studies needed, also for regulatory issues, to get the validation that we can enter market. And this will take a couple of years. So I expect market entry by the end of year 2023.
2023, quite time ahead. But that's already after the clinical trials.
Yes, exactly.
All the certificates, everything is being put on it.
Yes.
2023 is the day when you're going to see it at the doctor's office.
Yes.
Sounds great to me. You're in the early stage of developing the technology. Technology, I suppose, is only one part of the entire process of developing the product itself.
Our strategy is now to focus on already validated biomarkers. There we can rely on existing data. So there have been plenty of clinical studies using these two biomarkers to identify preeclampsia. So this is our current strategy to speed up the process and the time to market. However, we're also following up on new biomarkers that would even increase the sensitivity of such a test. It's unpredictable how long this will take. This also depends on the clinical research, which I cannot perform myself, but I'm trying to establish some collaborations.
How is it going with the collaboration as of now?
So far, it's been going very good. So I've been focusing on more the technology side. So the collaboration with EMPA is still ongoing. I now have a collaboration with the University of Applied Science in Basel, which has a lot of experience in vitro diagnostics and also in the development of point-of-care tests. So I can profit a lot from their knowledge, and that accelerates this whole technology development quite a bit.
In order to bring your company to the next level, I suppose you're also looking for funds.
Exactly. So funds is always an important topic for early stage startups. And the most important thing is like finding the right timing to talk to investors. At the beginning, you like to cover as much as possible with non-dilutive grants. So you can take your time to develop the technology until it's mature enough to really approach investors. Right now, I'm in the process of preparing, let's say, the seed financing round. And yeah, I've been talking to some investors and trying to reach out, get people interested in my technology.
Will you look for investors only in Switzerland?
My co-founders are based in California. So the people from Avails Medical. So they have an established network of investors in California. So I will definitely make use of this network, and we hope we get some investors interested.
Sounds like you're already very much settled in your startup. I mean, you're on the path to have a successful product, which there really is a need for. You know that. The market is there for that. You also have an access to investors. Now the real question is only, how does the team look like?
The team is the founders of Avails Medical, myself, and as scientific advisors, I have professors from EMPA and the University of Applied Science. And that gives me this is a great source of knowledge I can make use of. So in particular, my co-founder or the founder team includes biochemists, physicists, or in particular sensor specialists, and also medical doctors. And yeah, this is a great resource to move on. And My co-founder is also experienced in startups. So one of my co-founders, Mike, he's a serial entrepreneur. He's founded more than 20 companies, and he's also invested in a lot of early ventures. So he knows the drill, he knows the game, and so I can really profit from this knowledge.
Sounds great. I suppose you also have your own laboratory as of now.
MOMM Diagnostics doesn't have its own labs, so we're working in collaboration with EMPA and University of Applied Science. That also helps me to really stay lean, so I don't have a lot of running costs. I have access to state-of-the-art laboratories, which is great. And this is amazing in Switzerland, this possibility you get with these collaborations with universities. And that was also one of the reasons to start a company in Switzerland. So on the one hand, the access to knowledge, the access to infrastructure, and also the availability of money are very important factors for the success of a startup. And at the end of the day, it was easy to decide, okay, let's do this in Switzerland.
I understand having the infrastructure already pre-built in a sense that you can just go on with the idea and start from scratch is a great asset to begin with. Important question from my understanding is, once you develop a product like yours, how do you distribute it on the market?
So right now the plan is to work with distributors, so with established distributors, because such an in vitro diagnostic, so at the end it's like a medical device, you need to comply with the laws and regulatory of every individual country. So it becomes, or let's say, becomes very technical just to enter such a product in different markets. And then the healthcare system is quite different in different countries. So you would have to, or MOMM Diagnostic would have to work with established companies in these markets, with distributors that have access to obstetricians or to medical doctors and hospitals. And this would, of course, be much faster than establishing an own distribution channel.
That means you have to partner up with big players on the market.
Yes.
Do you actually also have something like an exit strategy in your case, specifically for MOMM Diagnostics? Why I'm asking this is because I heard about a couple of biotech companies which are specifically built up only for one purpose, which is just one product and no more. Therefore, the life cycle is actually defined by the exit at some point, where it's not a hope, it's a plan that they will be taken over by another pharmacy company. Is that also the case with MOMM Diagnosis, or you would like to continue to do research in other specific fields, specifically for pregnant women or something else entirely?
It's very much like other biotech startups. So the plan A is really an exit strategy with a trade sale to a bigger company. As I mentioned before, the distribution of such a product is such a big deal in terms of finances, in terms of network. You need to have an established customer basis. So which would take too much time for a small company. On the other hand, unlike pharmaceutical startups, for instance, the development of such a test does not cost billions. So it's also very likely to develop follow-up tests that work on the same point-of-care test platform. Both strategies are an option, I would say. So either trade sale to a bigger company or developing a platform technology that would be followed by further tests, not just a test for preeclampsia, but for example, for other pregnancy indications, or for cancer is always a famous example, where you have rapid testing to assure that the doctors can give you the best treatment.
Sounds like you really have a plan. So for the next 4 years, you're going to be busy with preeclampsia diagnostics, creating a test as a product, distributing it on the market, and have also clinical trials already done. And afterwards, what happens is, well, you'll see whether you like to stay in the business and continue, or actually there will be an offer from whether a big pharma company or a distribution company for medical devices, tests, etc. Yeah, stay open.
Yeah, this is the thing. So do what you love, and often you love the things you're good at. So for me, it's really this bridging new knowledge or new technologies to a market product. This is what I like doing. I really see myself taking on the next venture if this one is successful.
Well, I hope we'll stay in touch for that.
Sure.
Now, very critical question. Matthias, I know you're actually a family man. How do you manage family and research in such a complicated biotech topic, starting a company as well? I mean, looking around for investors, And the day has only 24 hours.
Things have changed quite a bit within the last year, yes. So my daughter is now 9 months old. You just try to manage. Actually, for me, it kind of helped, coming home, being in a total different scene. So it's really, or helps you to switch off and keep your mind off things, which is often the problem. So before my daughter was born, I couldn't, shut off at night or in the evenings or at night. And this drains quite some energy. So if you constantly think about what you should be doing, what you should have done, what's need to be done the next couple of days. So it's at the beginning there are so many things you don't have a routine for. And it always feels like, okay, you have to do everything at once. But then you just have to learn to accept certain paces and also make your own pace, work at your own pace, which takes quite some time to organize, but it helps a lot to don't push yourself too hard time-wise. I mean, that you don't overwork yourself. But as I said, like after my daughter was born, this actually helped, as weird as it sounds, but just to kind of come home, switch off, be in a total different setting, and sort of recharge the batteries. Although this is sometimes hard if the nights are short, but it's you sometimes or somehow manage.
It certainly sounds like you also find again the values of something else than just research.
Sure, yes. No, research was always a very important part in my life, as it's just fascinating, but there was always this drive to push it somewhere, not just research for the sake of knowledge, but also let's try to develop something that is useful. I don't know, work-life balance was always important for me. I had tons of different hobbies, so it didn't feel too hard to not just jump right into work and then work 20 hours a day. So not that type, however, as you said, like the day only has 24 hours, so time becomes a very valuable resource, and you need to be, or try to be as efficient as possible. Should I say it? Sometimes you just have to accept the work or have to accept a certain time frame and be happy with what you achieved in this time frame, and have to try to be as efficient as possible, and sometimes just accept the results that it is, and you can't work for perfection or try to dig deeper on every detail, as I really very much liked during my time as a researcher, during my doctoral studies. So where you actually are supposed to take your time and try to understand every tiny detail. And now this has changed quite a bit with the startup company. On the one hand, it's kind of sad because I liked the idea of just doing it to know why things are happening this way. But on the other hand, it's also nice because you progress much faster, and it helps you or you have to sometimes accept things are just this way, and this helps you to advance.
Mathias, as you mentioned, time is a valuable resource. Therefore, thank you very much for your time, Mathias. Is there anything else you would like to mention before we close down the podcast recording?
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Mathias. And to our listeners, thank you for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you and bye-bye.